RFPs, auctions, we have reverse auctions capability in Prodiger. Moving on to pest management and repairs and maintenance. All three of my businesses are managed on digital platforms. Technology is very dear to me. And I said if we have to scale up businesses today and where the future is headed, we have to focus on technology. And that's what I'm going to talk about in maybe about 45 minutes or so, is procurement in the digital world. The world is moving towards digitization, but as a procurement function, what are we doing about it? How are we changing things to be able to adapt? There are three key components to the success of any organization today. The first is the people, the second is the process, and the third is the technology. Traditionally, the people in procurement come from traditional admin roles, support functions, in India especially, and not really qualified in procurement functions. Right? Unlike a lot of matured markets like the US or Australia and others where you actually get qualification and you graduate as a supply chain professional. Yes, today there are a lot of certification programs that have come in, but can you go to a college and take up a degree in supply chain? Today you still cannot in Indian context. Right? When we talk of processes, a lot of processes for industrial applications are again driven by outside markets to India, where we've learned. So we have a lot of process orientation, like Toyota, we know what they brought in, the Six Sigma, and so on. A lot of process, but we are adapting. Technology, again, a lot of procurement platforms that exist in the world today are not homegrown. Something that, again, has come from outside world, the matured markets from outside, and we are trying to retrofit them into the Indian context. So any typical organization would eventually start working with multiple platforms. So you would have some platform to do your procure to pay or your finance functions, something for your payment functions, something for procurement functions, another platform to run your auctions, and so on. Now, depending on the size and scale and the need of an organization, you could end up with multiple platforms. My focus has been how do we integrate and bring one integrated solution to organizations. Now, when you go and talk to organizations today, there are three critical aspects that most of the chief procurement officers or the business leaders are demanding. The first is, how can you build in cost efficiencies? By a piecemeal approach, it's very difficult. But by aggregation capability, by working with multiple clients together and aggregating the demand, you can negotiate better and you can bring in those cost efficiencies and take that to your clients. The second is spend analytics. How do you understand, or what do you do to understand what you're spending, how you're spending, with whom you're spending, and so on. Very difficult today for a large number of organizations today. And the third element is, how do I improve my buyer experience? Today, traditional procurement is all handled manually. The tenders probably come out in manual documents. You want to hard copy, fill in, stamp, sign, deposit. The whole process runs manually. If you're participating in multiple tenders, you could end up with a lot of manual effort by deploying more number of people. How can you automate the whole procurement program? So, in today's rapidly changing business environment, the need for a digital strategy is greater than ever before. But today, most of the organizations do not have a very clear digital strategy. What do they want to do? Their approach today is still very piecemeal. The number of smartphones that we have today and the number of digital platforms that we have today have exponentially grown. Most of our buying decisions today are based on these technologies. How we shop, how we eat or what we eat is all driven by what we see on digital platforms, social media. What is being pushed to us through LinkedIn, through Facebook, through Instagram, and so on. The digital marketing campaigns that are run, we get influenced very easily and quickly. The digital formats. So, in our earlier discussions, we've heard of how there are sections of the society who do not get visibility. Right? How do we bring them and create that whole visibility? Is something that is completely amiss. There are a large number of consultants who've come into the field who say that 75% of our buying decisions are influenced by digital. But a lot of businesses today still shy away from getting on the digital platform. They're still employing the traditional route of marketing. Some of us would have heard of the concept of Industry 4.0. And that's led also to the emergence of Procurement 4.0. But what do we understand by Procurement 4.0? Again, if you look at the traditional method, earlier decision makers within organizations would assume that they were the influencers, they had all the knowledge, and they would dictate to the suppliers of what they would want, how they would want, at what terms would they want. Today with 4.0, there is a crucial integration of the external knowledge networks and internal stakeholders, in the sense suppliers are also focusing on innovation. Suppliers are also focusing on innovative products, innovative solutions. We need to sit back, listen to them, understand what they can bring in, what and how they can add value to our businesses. It's more around relationship building with the suppliers, with the partners, and the internal stakeholders. And that's the connect that Procurement 4.0 fundamentally will bring. Procurement is going through sweeping changes, but today those changes are piecemeal. It is dependent largely on organizations, on how far today they want to stretch and they want to push their digital strategies. But is the future going to be the same? It's not going to be the same. More and more people are adapting, some by design, some by default, some by force, because they have a threat of going out of business very soon if they don't adapt, if they don't change. There is a huge talent gap in the procurement field. And like I said earlier, we don't have formal qualification, even if certifications exist. If you pick up 100 procurement professionals, how many can you say with confidence have actually gone through a qualification and understand the dynamics of procurement, can understand how the negotiations are held, the terms and conditions? Today, a lot of procurement professionals, their approach is very superficial. Their focus is cost. But they don't know how to reduce cost. Is it just unit rate reduction, or is it overall value? Today, procurement is not seen as a sexy career option. The youngsters today, if you look at how many are really joining the procurement domain. Traditionally, a lot of admin staff have moved and become procurement managers. A lot of people from support functions have moved and become procurement staff. But how many of the youngsters are coming into procurement? You have a lot of tech startups, quick growth, good money, a lot of valuation, a lot of investment. That's the field that all the youngsters, they call themselves tech savvy. They want to be technologically able, and therefore they're not looking at procurement. So what do we do? How do we address this gap? The largest skill gap for category managers and contract specialists is analytics. How many of us can look at data? And a whole lot of us would have heard about big data. If there's a lot of data dumped on you, what tools do you have, what resources do you have to really make intelligence out of that data? How many of us are actually capable to create intelligence out of the data and present to the stakeholders of what our decision should be in deciding, again, what to buy, how to buy, from where to buy, and so on. So how can procurement get around the talent gap? Some recommendations that a lot of consultants, and I talk about the Big Four because there's a lot of study, there's a lot of research that is happening. And the Big Four the ENYs, the Deloittes, the KPMGs, and so on. Create a digital culture within organizations, firstly. Everybody has to have the same mindset. It cannot be piecemeal. It cannot be, I'm the CEO of a company and I'm all for digitization, but my rest of the staff is still running manual processes. Or if it's my procurement head who's very focused on bringing a lot of digitization, but the entire team or the other stakeholders within the organization just want to see paper being moved around. The second is, how can we automate repetitive tasks, PO cutting, end-to-end? How can we create digital catalogs for standardized products and services that we buy within an organization? How can, just at the click of a button, your deal is done? How can we promote diversity? Diversity itself brings a different perspective, brings a different flavor. And diversity just does not mean by hiring women employees. Diversity can be people from impoverished, marginalized societies. It could be handicapped. It could be women-owned businesses. It could be military veterans trying to do something and create a niche for themselves. Everybody brings their own perspective. Everybody brings their experiences to the table. At the end of it, procurement function is important because that's what's driving most of the businesses today. You influence, you negotiate, you invigorate, lead supply chains, and dramatically change markets. We, as a fraternity, have that influencing capability, and we should not forget that. We are at the helm and creating or influencing those buying decisions. But there's a huge gap even at the leadership level within organizations. What does the leader need to do? Starting from enabling the business environment itself. Right? Some of us would have heard of Michael Porter's The Forces. Yeah, the 5 forces. The physical barriers to entry. But today, with the digital world, those physical barriers no longer exist. So what do we do today? A lot of MBA courses are still teaching about Michael Porter's 5 forces. But is it really relevant today? Things have moved on, things have changed. Digitization itself may require the organizations to rethink their mission. And we have many examples today. Take the example of Kodak, for example. The film rolls, the digital cameras came in. What happened? They still continued with the same mission, with the same statements. And there are many, many examples. You can look up on Google and you'll find many, many examples. The mindset change does not happen till you've got the threat of running out of business. But in today's time, the market is so dynamic. It changes every 3 months. It changes every 6 months. Unless you adapt, unless you change with the times, you will be out of business. The digital understanding and the capabilities are required across the firm. Like I said, again, it's not one person or 2 people or 5 people. It's the entire firm. And it's to be supported by the corporate culture of that organization. It has to be top-down and bottoms-up. Both approaches have to be implemented.